You can never heal a wound you refuse to look at, and one of the deepest wounds many carry is tied to the woman who first carried them. There is a silence in many hearts when the word mother is spoken. For some, it is a name soaked in tenderness, a refuge, a place where love is endless and warm. For others, it is a sound that stirs confusion, grief, resentment, or even anger. But no matter where you stand on that spectrum, there is one truth that will never shift. Your mother was your first mirror, your first teacher, your first understanding of love. Until you make peace with that truth, until you uncover what her presence or her absence has etched into your soul, you will never walk fully free. This is not just about her, it is about you. It is about the shadow you carry unknowingly into your relationships, your choices, your self-worth. To understand your mother is to understand yourself. And until you do, true healing will remain out of reach. So I ask you, do not turn away. Walk with me through this truth, because at the end of this road, freedom is waiting for you. We live in a world where the word mother is often draped in halos, adorned with ribbons of perfection, wrapped in the expectation that she must always know what to say, always know what to do, always carry the answers tucked in her apron pocket. And yet, when you strip away the title, before she was anybody's mother, before she cradled you in her arms, she was a woman with her own fears, her own hunger, her own heartbreaks, a woman with dreams she may have set aside and wounds she may have carried quietly through every season of her life. To understand this truth is to take the first step toward your own healing. Many of us grow up believing that our mothers were meant to be unshakable towers, that they should never falter, never stumble, never fall. We expected them to be both shield and sword, provider and protector, soft enough to hold us, yet strong enough to never break. But what happens when that image crumbles? What happens when you look back and realize that the woman who raised you was trembling inside her own skin, making choices not from a place of infinite wisdom, but from survival, from confusion, from the aching desire simply to make it through the day? We often judge them through the lens of children who only see what was missing. We remember the nights she didn't come home on time, the mornings she was too tired to speak gently, the years when her love felt like a mystery we could not solve. But we seldom stop to ask, who was she before she was mama? What did she lose along the way? What did life demand of her that left her too weary to give us everything we wanted? Think about it. Your mother once had a childhood too. She may have grown up in a house where love was scarce, where kindness was rationed, where her own mother or father left her carrying scars she never showed you. She may have entered womanhood without the guidance she needed, trying to figure out how to raise you while still raising herself. And so when you look at her imperfections, when you trace the cracks in her armor, you are not just looking at her failures. You are witnessing her humanity. Some of you carry wounds from mothers who were present in body but absent in spirit. She may have worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs, just to put food on the table, and by the time she came home, her voice was short, her patience thin. As a child, you might have taken that as rejection, as if you were unworthy of her tenderness. But step back and see her through the eyes of a woman, not just a mother. See her bone-deep exhaustion, her quiet sacrifice, the way she poured herself out drop by drop until there was almost nothing left. That does not excuse the hurt you felt, but it explains the weight she carried. Others grew up with mothers who did not know how to stay, who drifted in and out of your life like shadows passing through an open window. The absence you felt cut you deep, and yet, before you let that pain fester forever, pause and ask, What demons chased her away? What storms lived inside her that made her believe she could not remain? Her leaving was not proof of your unworthiness. It was a reflection of battles you could not see, battles she may have lost long before you were born. It is easy to say she should have known better. Easy to point at her and demand perfection. But if you look at your own life, even now, you will see mistakes you have made, choices you regret, words you wish you could take back. If you can recognize your own humanity, then extend that same recognition to hers. Not because she did no wrong, but because no human escapes being flawed. The healing begins when you learn to separate the woman from the title. Mother is a role. It carries weight, responsibility, expectation. But the woman behind the role, she is a soul navigating her own story. Sometimes she rose above it, sometimes she failed beneath it. Both truths can exist at once, and both truths can teach you. When you begin to see your mother as human, something shifts inside of you. The anger softens into understanding. The confusion clears into compassion. You start to realize that her mistakes were not always about you. Often, they were about her own brokenness, her own unanswered prayers. That realization does not erase the pain, but it gives you a new lens through which to carry it. It allows you to forgive, not because what she did was acceptable, but because you are no longer willing to let her imperfections chain your spirit. Imagine looking at her not as the giant who was supposed to hold your world together, but as the little girl she once was, frightened, searching, hoping for love. Imagine that within her chest beats a heart just as fragile as yours. When you can see her that way, you will finally understand that expecting her to be a goddess was never fair. She was and always will be a woman, breathing, bleeding, flawed. And here is the gift. When you accept your mother's humanity, you give yourself permission to accept your own. You realize that you too will stumble. You too will make choices that others may not understand. And in that recognition, you begin to extend grace not only backward toward her, but forward toward yourself. Healing flows both ways. So if you are waiting for the day your mother comes to you with all the right words, if you are waiting for her to stand before you as the perfect parent she could never be, release that burden now. You cannot rewrite her story, but you can rewrite your response to it. You can honor the pieces of her that shone bright and acknowledge the pieces that faltered. You can hold both without bitterness. Because at the end of it all, before she was your mother, she was a woman. And until you see her that way, you will keep expecting the impossible. But when you finally open your eyes to her humanity, you will find a freedom that no apology, no explanation, no time lost could ever give you. That freedom is the soil where your healing will grow. Love is not always spoken in the tongue you expect. For some, it flows like a gentle river of words. I love you, whispered before bed, repeated in the morning, carried on the air like music. For others, it hides itself in action, in the unspoken, in the unseen. A plate of food set down at your place at the table, the light left on until you return home, the way she worked her fingers to the bone so you could wear shoes she never had. Too often, children grow into adults still wounded, believing they were unloved, when the truth is that love was present all along. It just came in a language they did not yet understand. The trouble with love is that we imagine it must look a certain way, sound a certain way, feel a certain way. We expect warmth, affection, open arms, gentle affirmations. And when our mothers could not give us that, we thought they withheld love. But what if love was there, only spoken in a dialect foreign to your heart at the time? What if the meals she cooked, the laundry she folded, the sacrifices she made in silence were all her way of saying, "Child, you are my reason for rising every morning"? Some of you were raised by mothers who never once uttered the words, "I love you." The absence of those words carved holes in your spirit, made you wonder if you were ever truly wanted. And yet, think back. Did she cover you with a blanket when you fell asleep on the couch? Did she save the last piece of bread for you? Did she work long hours, not because she loved her job, but because she loved you enough to endure it? That was her language. That was her way of speaking a truth she did not know how to put into words. There are mothers who show love with discipline, harsh words, strict rules, curfews that felt like cages. You thought she was being cruel, controlling, unwilling to let you breathe. But what if, in her eyes, structure was safety? What if her discipline was her shield against the chaos of the world? To you, it felt like suffocation. To her, it was protection. She did not always know how to balance freedom with fear, but in her way, she was loving you fiercely. Others had mothers who showed love through laughter, through songs in the kitchen, through stories told at night that stitched your imagination together. That was love too, no less powerful, no less sacred. The problem is not that love was absent. The problem is that we measure it against our own expectations. We wanted soft words, but maybe she only knew how to show love through service. We wanted presence, but maybe she showed love through provision. We wanted her arms around us, but maybe her way of loving was to keep a roof above us. Think of love as a language. If someone speaks French and you only understand English, you might hear their words and think, this means nothing. But the truth is, meaning is there. You simply do not yet understand how to receive it. Your mother may have spoken the love language of sacrifice while you longed for affection. She may have spoken in acts of service while you hungered for words of affirmation. The language gap left you aching. But when you grow older, when you learn to translate those gestures, you may begin to see that love was never missing. It was only misunderstood. This is not to dismiss the pain you felt. A child who longed to hear, "I am proud of you," cannot fill that emptiness with a new pair of shoes. A child who longed for a hug cannot replace it with a hot meal. The longing was real and the ache was valid. But when you stand in the fullness of adulthood, you have the power to reframe. You can look back with wiser eyes, and perhaps you can see that her love was real, though imperfectly delivered. And for some, the truth is harder. There are mothers who did not know how to love in any form, mothers who were too broken, too trapped in their own wounds to give even scraps of affection. That absence is a language too. It says, I could not give what I never received. Painful, yes. Devastating, yes. But even then, understanding the language of her absence allows you to release the burden of blame. It teaches you that her inability to love was about her, not about your worth. Love comes in different languages, and sometimes the greatest act of healing is to learn to translate them. You can look back on the meals, the labor, the discipline, the sacrifices, and recognize them for what they were, attempts at love. Not perfect, not always enough, but love nonetheless. And when you learn this, something shifts. The resentment softens, the emptiness begins to close, the sharp edges of memory smooth into understanding. You realize that though you may not have received love in the language you craved, you were still bathed in it, still carried by it. And even if your mother's language was silence, you have the power now to create a new language of love for yourself and for those who come after you. The truth is this: love wears many faces. Sometimes it wears the face of tenderness, sometimes the face of discipline, sometimes the weary face of a woman who keeps going when she has nothing left to give. To heal, you must learn to see them all. To heal, you must learn to translate the language your mother spoke, even if she never knew how to say the words you long to hear. Absence is its own teacher. The quiet place where love should have spoken but did not, the hollow of an empty chair at the table, the silence of a phone that never rang, the unopened door at school events, these speak just as loudly as presence. For many, the greatest wound is not what was said or done, but what was withheld. And yet, even in the absence of a mother, there is a lesson. Painful though it may be, absence shapes us, instructs us, chisels us into forms we never asked for but must reckon with. When a mother is not there, whether by choice, by circumstance, or by fate, the child learns quickly what loneliness feels like. You learn how to fill your own cup, how to comfort yourself when tears sting your eyes and no gentle hand arrives to wipe them away. That ache can linger into adulthood, making you wonder why you were not worth staying for. But listen closely. Her absence does not mean you were unworthy of love. Her absence only means she could not give what you deserved. That is her limitation, not your lack. Absence can shape a child into strength. The boy who grows without his mother's guidance may become fiercely independent, learning how to survive, how to stitch together his own safety. The girl who longs for her mother's embrace may grow into a woman who refuses to abandon others because she knows the sharpness of that wound too well. But absence can also shape a child into fragility, into mistrust, into hunger for validation that never seems satisfied. It can create adults who search endlessly in others for the love that was missing at the start. And still, absence speaks. It says, you cannot always depend on the ones you thought would never leave. It says, life is not fair. Love does not always arrive in the form you deserve. It says, strength is born in the cracks. Resilience rises from the empty spaces. What absence cannot do is erase your value. Some of you carry the memory of a mother who was there in body but gone in spirit. She may have been in the house, but her eyes were distant, her mind locked behind doors you could not open. Addiction, depression, exhaustion, trauma, these shadows took her from you while she was still in the room. That too is absence. And for the child, that absence feels like rejection, like invisibility. But again, hear me clearly. Her silence, her distance, her inability to connect were never proof that you were not worthy. They were proof that she was lost inside her own storm. Absence teaches empathy. Those who have felt the ache of a missing mother often grow heart-sensitive to the pain of others. You can recognize the hunger in another's eyes because you once carried it yourself. You can hold space for their grief because you understand it in your bones. Absence also teaches choice. You learn that you can either repeat the pattern, passing down silence, detachment, distance, or you can choose differently. You can become the presence you never had. Absence has a cruel way of echoing. It follows you into relationships, into friendships, into the way you love yourself. You may find yourself clinging to people, terrified they will leave because you have lived that abandonment before. Or you may find yourself keeping others at a distance, afraid to let them close enough to hurt you again. Both are lessons written by absence. But lessons, once recognized, can be rewritten. You are not bound to repeat the story. There are those who say absence is worse than presence, because when someone is present, you at least have something tangible to confront. But when they are absent, you battle ghosts. You fight shadows that cannot answer back. You ask questions into silence, and that silence can haunt you for years. Still, if you listen differently, silence also teaches. It teaches you to hear your own voice. It teaches you to find comfort in solitude. It teaches you to trust your own strength when no one else is there to hold you up. If your mother was absent, whether through neglect, distance, or circumstance, you must understand this. Her absence is not the end of your story. It is only the beginning. You are allowed to grieve it, to mourn what you did not receive. But you are also allowed to grow from it, to let it sharpen your compassion, to let it carve into you a resilience so unshakable that nothing can break you again. Absence is a mirror. It reflects what we long for most. If you miss tenderness, you will learn to give tenderness more generously. If you miss guidance, you will vow to guide others more carefully. If you miss safety, you will build safe places with your own two hands. In this way, absence becomes presence. It becomes a teacher louder than words, stronger than memories. And one day, perhaps, you will look back and realize that even in what she could not give, she gave you something. She gave you the awareness of what love should look like. She gave you the knowledge of what you must never repeat. She gave you the fire to become what she could not be. Do not let her absence become a life sentence. Let it become a lesson. Do not let it be the chain that keeps you tied to bitterness. Let it be the wind that pushes you toward a new way of loving. Because absence, as painful as it is, can be the very soil where healing begins. Forgiveness is a word that rolls off the tongue so easily, yet it sits heavy in the heart. It is often misunderstood, twisted into something it was never meant to be. Many people resist forgiveness because they believe it means saying, "It was all right." They think it means excusing harm, minimizing pain, pretending that wrong was not wrong. But forgiveness does not say, "It was all right." Forgiveness says, "I refuse to let it hold me prisoner any longer." It is not approval, it is release. When we talk about mothers, forgiveness becomes even more complicated. For some, their mother's actions cut so deep that the wound still bleeds decades later. Words spoken in anger, choices that left you abandoned, betrayals that cracked your heart. To forgive that feels impossible, and it feels unjust. Why should you release someone who never apologized? Why should you let go when she never even acknowledged the harm? These questions are valid, and they deserve to be honored. But forgiveness is not about excusing her. Forgiveness is about freeing you. Think of chains. Every memory you replay, every grudge you clutch to your chest, every bitter word you whisper under your breath, they are links in a chain wrapped around your spirit. You believe holding on keeps her accountable, but in truth, holding on keeps you bound. She may have gone on with her life, but you are still carrying the fire of old pain. Forgiveness is the act of dropping the chain, not because she deserves it, but because you do. Forgiveness does not erase the past. It does not rewrite history. If your mother failed you, that failure is real. If she hurt you, that hurt is undeniable. To forgive does not mean to deny it happened. It means you choose to stop drinking the poison of resentment every day. It means you decide that your future will not be built on the ashes of what she did or did not do. Some people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. They think forgiving means going back, opening the door, rebuilding trust. But reconciliation is a choice that takes two people. Forgiveness, however, is yours alone. You can forgive without ever inviting her back into your life. You can forgive while keeping boundaries strong. Forgiveness is the clearing of your own heart, not the erasure of hers. Picture a garden. Imagine the soil is rich but filled with weeds, bitterness, anger, blame. Those weeds choke every seed you try to plant. Forgiveness is not pretending the weeds were never there. Forgiveness is pulling them out so your garden can bloom. Whether or not she ever enters that garden again is beside the point. The garden belongs to you. For many, forgiveness feels unfair because it feels like letting her off the hook. But holding on to rage does not keep her accountable. It only keeps you exhausted. Accountability is not yours to enforce on the past. Healing is. Forgiveness is the healing you grant yourself. And yet, forgiveness is not a single act. It is a process. Some days you will feel light as though the wound has closed. Other days, the scar will throb and the anger will resurface. That does not mean you failed. Forgiveness is not a straight road. It is a winding path you must walk again and again. Each step loosens the grip of pain. Each step tells your soul, I choose freedom. Think of your mother not as a saint, not as a monster, but as a woman, flawed, limited, shaped by her own struggles. This perspective does not excuse her mistakes, but it helps you understand them. Understanding softens bitterness, and softness makes room for forgiveness. If she could have done better, she might have. If she knew how to love more fully, she would have. Forgiveness acknowledges her limitations without letting them dictate your life any longer. Sometimes, forgiveness is not about the other person at all. It is about breaking the inheritance of pain. Because bitterness, if left unchecked, passes down like a family heirloom. The resentment you carry toward your mother can easily spill onto your children, your relationships, your friendships. Forgiveness is the act of saying, this stops with me. It is choosing not to let old wounds poison new love. Forgiveness also does not mean forgetting. You can remember and still forgive. You can acknowledge the depth of the wound while choosing not to let it fester. Memory and forgiveness can live side by side. One tells the truth of what happened. The other tells the truth of how you refuse to be destroyed by it. And hear this, forgiveness does not require her apology. You may never hear, I'm sorry, from your mother's lips. You may never see the day when she admits the pain she caused. But your healing cannot wait on her awakening. If you wait for her apology, you tie your freedom to her choices. Forgiveness says, I will not wait. I free myself today. The greatest misunderstanding is that forgiveness is a gift to the offender. No. Forgiveness is a gift to yourself. It is you saying, I will not carry this burden another mile. I will not let yesterday steal today. I will not let her wounds keep me wounded forever. When you forgive, you are not saying she was right. You are saying you will not be ruined by her wrong. You are saying you choose peace over poison. You are saying your spirit deserves to dance again. And that, beloved, is power. You are more than your reflection in the mirror. You are the echo of 1,000 moments you did not live, the living proof of stories told long before your first breath. In your blood are the whispers of generations, and in that blood flows the story of your mother. Whether she gave you joy or sorrow, whether she lifted you up or let you down, her story runs through your veins. To deny it is to deny yourself. To embrace it is to begin healing. Your laughter, do you know where it comes from? That deep rolling sound or that sharp, sudden giggle? It may have been hers once. Perhaps she laughed like that as a young girl under the sun before life bent her shoulders with burdens. The way you tilt your head when you're thinking, the rhythm of your walk, the curve of your hands, these are not accidents. They are remnants, passed down like treasures you never asked for. You are a continuation of her story, even if you wish you were not. And yet too many spend their lives running from this truth. They say, I will never be like her, as though her presence inside them is a curse to escape. But you cannot run from what flows in your veins. You can only choose how to carry it. If she gave you strength, embrace it. If she gave you wounds, learn from them. Her story is not your prison. It is your inheritance, and you can decide how to spend it. Think of the struggles she bore. Perhaps she came from a childhood where love was scarce, where survival was the only lesson. Perhaps she learned to stay quiet when her spirit wanted to sing, or perhaps she shouted when silence would have been safer. Those patterns shaped her, and in turn shaped the way she mothered you. Some of those lessons she passed on with care, like seeds planted carefully in soil. Others slipped through without her knowing, like shadows stretching across the floor. You carry both, the gifts and the shadows. But carrying does not mean repeating. Just because her blood runs in your body does not mean her choices must. You are not doomed to relive her mistakes. You are not sentenced to walk the same weary path. You are the author now, and you can write a new chapter. Her story is the foundation, but the house you build upon it is yours. There is power in recognizing what you carry. When you know the pain she endured, you can understand why she stumbled. When you know the dreams she lost, you can understand why she looked at you with both pride and sorrow. And when you know the strength she held, even if hidden, you can see that strength rising in yourself. To carry her story is not just to carry her failures, it is to carry her resilience, her endurance, her fight. Do you ever wonder why certain fears live in you? Why certain habits cling to you like vines? Some of them did not begin with you. They began with her, and perhaps even before her. Trauma, like love, can be inherited. Pain, like laughter, can be passed down. But so can survival, so can wisdom, so can courage. To carry her stories in your blood is to realize that you are not only the product of wounds, you are also the evidence of survival. And so the question is not whether you carry her story, but how you will honor it. Will you let the darker chapters define you, or will you rise from them? Will you continue the cycle of silence, or will you speak the truth she could not? Will you allow the brokenness to continue flowing, or will you heal it here with you? Every day, with every choice, you are answering that question. There is a sacredness in acknowledging her within you. Not worshiping, not excusing, but acknowledging. When you look at your hands and see hers, when you look at your strength and remember it came from her battles, you begin to see that her presence is not something to erase. It is something to transform. You can take what was bitter and make it sweet. You can take what was heavy and use it as fuel. Some resist this truth because they fear it means accepting all of her, even the harm. But carrying her story does not mean approving of her actions. It means recognizing that you are a living continuation and you have the power to turn her unfinished lines into poetry. She may have written pain into the first chapters, but you can write healing into the last. Think of a river. At its source, it may be muddy, cluttered with stones, tangled with roots. But as it flows, it can clear, it can widen, it can nourish fields along the way. Your mother may be the source, but you are the river in motion. Her story is part of you, but you choose where it flows next. And there is beauty here, too, because within you is not only her hardship, but also her joy. The song she sang when no one listened, the hope she carried even when it was small, the love she may not have known how to give in words, all of it lives in you. Her stories are alive in your breath, in your hands, in your choices. You carry them whether you acknowledge them or not. So better to carry them with awareness, with intention, with purpose. To heal is not to cut yourself off from her blood. To heal is to honor it without being bound by it. To say, yes, I am my mother's child, but I am also my own. To say, her stories live in me, but I choose how they are told. That is the gift and the responsibility of carrying her in your veins. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is not pretending the wound never happened. Healing is not sweeping the pain under the rug and smiling as though your soul is spotless. Healing is a dialogue with the past. It is a conversation you must have with the little child still living inside you, with the memories that ache when touched, with the ghosts that sit quietly in the corners of your mind. Until you face them, until you speak to them, they will speak for you in ways you cannot control. So many walk through life silenced by what they never said. They carry words they wanted to scream at their mothers, but swallowed instead. They carry questions left unanswered. Why did you leave? Why didn't you protect me? Why couldn't you love me the way I needed? Silence builds like a wall, and behind that wall, the child inside you waits, aching to be heard. Healing begins when you dare to have the dialogue. It may not happen face to face, it may not even happen aloud, but the conversation must be had. You may write her a letter that may never reach her hands. In that letter, you pour out everything: the love, the rage, the longing, the grief. You tell her the truth of what it felt like to be her child. You name the wounds, you name the scars, and then you name your strength. That act alone is dialogue. That act alone tells the past, I will not be silent anymore. Some find their dialogue in prayer. They speak into the heavens, whispering words their mothers may never hear, but their souls do. They say, I forgive you, or you hurt me, or I love you still. It is not about whether she hears. It is about whether you free the words from your chest. Healing cannot come while your truth is locked away. Others sit in therapy, speaking to a stranger who holds space for the child they once were. There, in that room, the dialogue becomes sacred. Tears become words. Anger becomes words. Silence becomes words. And in those words, healing unfolds. Because once spoken, pain loses some of its power. Once named, wounds begin to close. The past is not a place you escape. It is a place you must revisit gently, carefully, but bravely. Too many try to outrun it. They run into careers, into relationships, into busyness, trying to outpace the shadow of what their mothers did or did not give. But shadows cannot be outrun. They must be faced. And when you turn around and look at them, you find they are not as monstrous as they seemed. They are simply the shapes of old hurt, waiting for your acknowledgement. Healing as dialogue means asking yourself hard questions. It means sitting with the memory of your mother and saying, what was her story? What was my story? Where do they meet? And where do they break apart? It means separating what was hers from what is yours. Her pain is not yours to keep. Her failures are not yours to repeat. Her silence is not yours to carry. You must tell her ghost, I release what belongs to you, and I reclaim what belongs to me. That is dialogue. That is healing. Sometimes the dialogue is tender. You remember the moments she smiled, the way she touched your face, the rare times when love shone through her eyes. You hold those moments close, letting them soften the bitterness. Other times, the dialogue is fierce. You tell her in no uncertain terms, you hurt me and I deserved better. Both tenderness and fierceness have their place in healing. Both are necessary. And even if your mother is gone from this world, the dialogue is not over. Death does not silence the conversation. You can still speak to her in your prayers, in your journals, in your heart. You can still write her story into poetry, still carry her name into healing. The grave cannot end the dialogue because the past lives in you and you live in the present. Healing is the bridge between them. This dialogue with the past is not just about your mother. It is about the child in you who needs to be heard. The child who waited by the window, the child who longed for a gentle touch, the child who wondered what was wrong with them. You must sit with that child and say, nothing was wrong with you. You were always worthy of love. You are still worthy of love. That is the most powerful dialogue you will ever have. Healing requires courage. To open the door to the past is to risk pain flooding back. But pain, unspoken, festers. Pain faced begins to dissolve. You cannot change the story, but you can change your relationship with it. You can look at it not as a prison, but as a teacher. You can say, this is what happened, but it will not define me. This is where I came from, but it is not where I will stay. And little by little, as you continue the dialogue, the past loosens its grip. The shadows grow lighter. The child inside you begins to trust that you will not silence them anymore. And your mother, whether she ever understands or not, becomes less of a wound and more of a story. A story you can tell without breaking, a story you can carry without crumbling, because healing is not about erasing the past. It is about giving the past a voice so that it no longer needs to scream through your present. Healing is about speaking, listening, releasing. Healing is a dialogue with the past, and until you speak, the silence will speak for you. Motherhood is not only defined by the act of bearing children. It is deeper than biology, wider than the cradle, larger than the lullaby. It is the essence of creation, the spirit of nurturing, the quiet power of carrying hope, even when the world is heavy. Whether you have children or not, whether your womb was ever filled or remains untouched, whether you raised a family or built a life of your own, the spirit of motherhood lives inside you too. It is stitched into the fabric of your being, for you are the child of a mother, and that inheritance did not stop with her. It flows through you. Too often we narrow motherhood to diapers, lullabies, and sleepless nights. We imagine it only in rocking chairs and birthday candles. But motherhood is also in the way you hold a friend's hand when their heart is breaking. It is in the way you stand tall for someone who is too weary to stand alone. It is in the way you protect, the way you create, the way you nurture dreams that might otherwise wither. You are carrying motherhood every time you offer warmth, every time you breathe life into someone else's darkness, every time you plant seeds of love in soil that looks barren. The truth is, you inherited from your mother not only her scars, but also her resilience. Even if she failed you, even if she could not embody the kind of nurturing you longed for, the spirit of motherhood still took root in you. For some, it appears as fierce protection, as the ability to guard loved ones like a lioness. For others, it appears as gentle wisdom, as the ability to speak peace into chaos. And for many, it appears as creativity itself, the ability to birth ideas, art, visions, and new worlds from nothing. All of this is motherhood. All of this lives in you. Sometimes healing requires recognizing that you have the power to give yourself the love you never received. That motherly voice you craved, soft, affirming, safe. You can learn to cultivate it within yourself. You can become the mother your younger self always needed. You can whisper to your own spirit, you are enough, you are worthy, you are loved. This is the highest form of motherhood, the one that begins with self-nurturing. For how can you carry love into the world if you refuse to carry it for yourself? Motherhood, at its core, is about sustaining life. That life may not always be a child. It may be a vision, a community, a friendship, or even a dream you refuse to let die. Think of the teachers who shape young minds, the artists who breathe new stories into existence, the leaders who protect those they guide. Each of them is embodying the spirit of motherhood. It is not about gender. It is not about age. It is about the eternal well of care, creation, and protection that flows through the human spirit. So many fear they are empty because they never bore children, but emptiness does not live there. Within you is a garden of creativity and compassion waiting to be seen. You mother every dream you dare to chase, every plan you bring into reality, every time you choose hope when despair beckons. You mother every soul you encourage, every heart you comfort, every life you touch with kindness. And in that way, you are shaping the world as powerfully as any mother shaping the life of her child. Even if your mother wounded you, even if she left holes in your heart, you still carry her power. You carry her stories in your bones, her lessons in your blood, and her resilience in your spirit. Perhaps she showed you what love is not, and in that absence you learned how deeply the world needs love. Perhaps she showed you what it means to sacrifice, to endure, to keep going when life is merciless. Those lessons, too, are gifts. And you carry them forward in the way you choose to live, the way you choose to give. There will be moments when you doubt it, moments when you feel unworthy of carrying that sacred spirit, moments when your own flaws glare back at you like mirrors you cannot escape. But understand this, motherhood was never about perfection. It was never about always having the right words, always knowing the right steps, always being without fault. Motherhood has always been about showing up again and again, despite the weight of the world pressing down. It is about trying, failing, and still choosing to love anyway. That is what lives in you. That is what makes you whole. The motherhood in you is not only for others, it is for generations yet to come. You may never rock a baby to sleep, but your words, your art, your courage, your kindness, these will outlive you. These will be the lullabies future generations hear in their own spirits. These will be the seeds planted long after you are gone. To recognize the motherhood within you is to recognize your power to leave a legacy far greater than your own life. And so, you must walk with your head lifted. You must understand that the ability to mother is not limited by circumstance or biology. It is a river flowing through you, waiting to be poured into the thirsty places of this world. It is the embrace you offer a friend in sorrow, the wisdom you give to a child not your own, the passion you pour into your work, the strength you bring to a cause greater than yourself. This is the living spirit of motherhood, and it belongs to you. It lives in your gentleness and in your fierceness. It lives in your voice and in your silence. It lives in your tears and in your laughter. It lives in your ability to build, to heal, to restore, to create. And the more you embrace it, the more whole you become. You need not wait for permission. You need not wait for circumstance. Motherhood already lives in you. It always has. It always will. Your mother is not the ending of your story, she is the beginning. And beginnings are not meant to hold you hostage. They are meant to show you where you came from so you can choose where you are going. When you understand her humanity, when you forgive her limitations, when you honor her lessons and release her mistakes, you free yourself. And in that freedom, you will finally heal.